Thank you very much. Also, thank you to the previous presentations. I would like to tell a bit, present a bit about my research that I did during my master's thesis research, the qualitative part of it, and present a paper that I've compiled together with Dr. James Blundell, that's in the room today, my colleague Jeroen van Rooij, and also Mr. or Dr. Lee from Cranfield University, and Dr. Landman from Delft University. I'll keep the first few slides a bit short because there is a bit of overlap with what Alexander has already presented. The last decades, aviation has gotten safer and safer, and that means that accidents and incidents are rare to occur, and that means that pilots, just like we are when we get in the car, when we drive to work, are expecting normalcy and not expecting unusual events to happen. And when they do happen, that often results in startle and surprise reactions in the pilot. A quick look at the definitions. Again, they're very similar to what Alexandra has already shown. Startle is the sudden involuntary reaction to an intense stimulus, such as a sudden loud noise. For example, when you pop a balloon, even if you know that it's going to pop, you still react to the loud noise. Surprise is a cognitive emotional response to something unexpected, which results from a mismatch between one's mental expectations and perceptions of one's environment, a mismatch between expectations and reality. I've added the Landman model of startle and surprise on the right-hand side of the slide. Unfortunately, the time is too short to go into it, but I do recommend reading her paper because it's a very nice schematic representation of startle and surprise. I often get asked why we lump startle and surprise together, because people say, aren't they different? Yes, they are, but they have similar effects on performance. They often occur together, as Alexander also already indicated, and especially for pilots, they're hard to distinguish which one of the two is causing the stress reaction. And that's why there's a management method that addresses both startle and surprise at the same time. I was lucky to be working at an airline that was one of the first to introduce a startle management method to their pilots as part of their CRM training in their simulator program. It was developed by the Dutch Air and Space Laboratory, NLR, in cooperation and with funding of EASA. The method consists out of these 5 steps and has since been integrated in the management advice of non-normal situations as well. We'll go through it very quickly. The first step is to announce reset, to alert the other pilot that you're taking a small break from flying the plane and doing the reset method. Then you take physical distance, which consists of pushing yourself back in your chair to create a bit of distance from the threatening stimulus and to create a bit of distance from the threat. Then the core of the method is a breathing method, as also is a bit similar to the one Alexander already explained this morning. It's using abdominal breathing, so a deep breath in and then a slow exhalation, which is longer than the inhalation, and that you repeat if necessary. After that, you can do this one simultaneous with the breathing exercise. You tense your muscles and then you relax them again to remove any muscle tension that was a result of the startle reaction. And then you check the mental state of your fellow crew member, because maybe he's affected by startle and surprise and doesn't realize it. Maybe he needs a bit of help getting out of it. So you check each other. And after that, you start building situation awareness and start looking around to see what caused the startle and surprise reaction. These were my 5 research objectives: to examine the pilot perception of the operational impact of startle and surprise, understand the pilot views of the benefits of a startle and surprise management method, and explore possible inhibiting factors of a startle and surprise management method, and as a 4th objective, to look into training adjustments to the method, and finally to see how it's used by the pilots, if they use it in full, and at which moment they use it. There had been a lot of research in simulators, or well, maybe not a lot, but several experiments in the simulator, among others in the University of Delft. And also when KLM introduced the method, it was tested as well and evaluated in the simulator. But there had never been an operational evaluation. And that's what I was curious about, to see if pilots actually use the method, because it's one thing to do it when somebody's watching over your shoulder, an instructor or a researcher, but it's a different thing when your life is actually in danger if you actually do the same. The research consisted of 10 semi-structured interviews with pilots from the same airline. 5 captains first, 4 first officer, 1 second officer, relatively experienced sample. 7 out of 10 were instructors, also to get the view of instructors, because they experience perhaps a bit more startle and surprise situations, and they also have experience in training the method, and they also observe other pilots using it in the simulator as well. We analyzed the interview results with thematic analysis by Brown and Clark. Next, we'll have a look at each of the research objectives. I've added a few quotes as well from the research. The first one was just confirmation of what was already known. Pilots do experience physical effects and psychological effects from startle and surprise reaction, and they clearly indicated those in the interviews as well. All pilots were positive about the startle and surprise method. Many of them had used it as well in actual startle and surprise situations, and several pilots expressed that they experienced improved situation awareness and reduced stress levels thanks to the method. The quote on the right-hand side below is from a colleague that experienced actually a quite severe engine problem, and he said that he was quite affected by startle and surprise, and after he did the reset, as we call it, the management method, he felt like his brain was plugged back in and he got clarity again to deal with the situation. Then a very interesting finding was as well that there are several inhibiting factors for use of the startle and surprise management method. The first one was admitting you're startled. Several pilots indicated that they found it difficult to admit to their colleagues that they were startled or surprised, especially if the other pilot was unaffected. So that, yeah, took a little bit of courage sometimes. Something that was mentioned really many times in the interviews was the desire to take quick action, and perhaps that's something that we're selected to do as well if something happens, to act, and that makes it difficult to pause at the moment and take a step back and do the reset that perhaps is so very much needed. And it seemed to be more prevalent the more stressful the situation is, the more strong the desire was to take quick action. And that's what we dubbed the startle paradox effect. People want to do something about the threat, eliminate the threat, and not waste time, as it feels sometimes to them on a method, even though when they use it, it really improves their performance. Then environmental factors were sometimes a complicating factor. For example, in strong turbulence, it was difficult to perform the method. But also one of the pilots reported that when there were lots of alarms going off in a situation where a high-speed alert and a stick shaker were going off at the same time due to an airspeed problem, it was difficult to take the time and do a reset, because it's very distracting to hear all this loud and scary noises. Pilots also considered the method more with startle than surprise, but that's very likely also due to the confusion about the terms. Very often surprises are referred to as startle, and that makes it difficult to really make any conclusions on this last point. When it comes to training improvements, pilots indicated that in the training in this airline, it was not sufficiently addressed in UPRT, upset prevention and recovery training. That's because of the way it's trained. We usually have one pilot fly the aircraft in an unusual altitude, and then the other pilot has to recover. And that means that it's not very surprising. And of course, the emphasis on first flying out of the unusual altitude. And after that, you would perhaps perform a reset, but then the simulation is already stopped and the instructor moves on to the next exercise. Also, people found it difficult to apply in complex scenarios, such as a decompression, for example. I fly the Boeing 737, and if a decompression happens, you have to do a lot of things at the same time. You have to put on your mask, you have to establish communication, you have to switch a couple of switches on the overhead panel, and you really fast have to establish a descent to get down to a safer altitude where there's more breathable oxygen. And that makes it difficult also because of the high stress levels, and perhaps the startle paradox again makes it difficult for pilots to fit in the startle method in such a complicated scenario. And lastly, pilots said that it would be valuable to share experiences in the training as well. Then we looked at how pilots use the methods. It turns out that not all steps were used equally much. The most appreciated step was checking the mental state of the fellow crew member. And there were actually some stories where that actually really helped remedying the situation. The one that was least appreciated was the tense and relaxed shoulder and arm muscles and the taking physical distance. So yeah, the breathing and the checking the mental state were the two steps that people used and appreciated most. Yeah, this is a bit of a complicated schematic. This is the Landman model. I won't go into it, but it's a bit of a plug to read the paper that we submitted here to the conference. We plotted all the quotes into the model, and it actually turns out that it explains pretty well what's happening. But that's for you to read in the paper, hopefully. So my conclusions and recommendations were that it's a very useful and appreciated method. Pilots really indicate that that it helped them, and that also startle and surprise is something that happens quite regularly. So it's a useful thing to have in your toolbox as a pilot to use. Then it's important to emphasize the startle paradox in training, to explain to pilots that the urge to act is very strong, and that sometimes gets in the way of doing something that will actually help you taking better decisions and improve your situation awareness. Then it's also important to train a variety of situations so pilots can practice the appropriate timing of the method. And furthermore, it's important to keep the method short and simple. And one of the examples of a short and simple method is, for example, the aviate breathe check method, which was developed by Matteo Piras last year. After the interview research, we also did a survey among about 239 pilots, which has a paper which is currently under review. And with ground fields, we're currently looking into startle and surprise among helicopter pilots as well. Thank you very much.